Nobody just rolls out of bed one morning and suddenly believes the earth is hollow and that an ancient civilization is thriving beneath our feet. It doesn't work that way. These ideas don't crash in, they drift. A video in your feed, a stray blog post, a comment that hits differently. It tugs on something quiet inside, something that's maybe always been there waiting. The moment it feels like it could be true, that feeling becomes its own kind of proof. Before long, reality starts reshaping itself subtly, silently. From the outside, it looks absurd, like a wild detour from logic. But from the inside, it feels like waking up from a long, artificial sleep. It doesn't feel like you've gone off the rails. It feels like you're finally seeing things clearly. That's what makes it powerful. The most convincing illusions never show up wearing a mask. They wear the face of revelation. They offer that intoxicating feeling that you've been let in on something secret. Like you've peeled back the curtain and now you're seeing the world as it actually is. Whether it's psychic downloads, tarot spreads, hidden alien bases, or cosmic YouTube revelations, the pull comes from the same source. They offer comfort where the world feels chaotic, meaning where things once felt random. Everyone wants to believe they know what's really going on. No one wants to feel like a pawn in some indifferent universe. These stories don't just explain things, they make you matter. They whisper. You see what others don't. You're awake. You get it. That hunger for clarity, that need to believe in something, is the first step into the dream. It's not a mistake. It's not even a flaw. It's just what the mind does. It spins stories endlessly. And if we're not paying attention, those stories get so rich, so detailed, we forget they're stories at all. We live inside them, convinced they're real. But here's the thing. You can't pull someone out of a dream by shouting at them that they're dreaming. That just becomes another scene in the dream, another role to react to. And the force that pulls someone deep into illusion, it's not all that different from the one trying to yank them out. The voice that says, they're deluded, I have to help them, still comes from belief. From the idea that you see clearly and they don't. And that too is a story. What actually shifts things is presence, real clarity, the kind that doesn't fight. When you're anchored in that space, you stop reacting and something quieter starts to come through. Something steadier. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You just are. We don't fall into strange beliefs because we're foolish. We fall because we're wired to find patterns. That's part of being human. It's the same impulse that saw gods in the stars. That connected myths to weather patterns. That read signs in smoke or bones. And today, that same wiring is decoding data into secret plots or stitching together headlines into shadowy plans. And let's be honest, the official version of reality hasn't exactly earned our trust. Governments lie. Institutions cover things up. Religions fracture under their own contradictions. So when an alternate version appears full of symbolism, mystery, and secret meaning, it can feel more alive than the boring, clunky mainstream narrative. More exciting, more meaningful. That's why magic never truly vanishes. It just updates its language. Psychics become intuitives. Channeling turns into downloads. Tarot is now emotional guidance. Manifestation becomes reality creation. None of these stick around because they're evil. They stick around because they speak to something we rarely name our need to feel connected, powerful, special. Our longing to matter, to touch something larger than logic. But when you finally see through the illusion of a separate self, of a me who needs to become something, fix something, wake up, it all starts to loosen. Those practices no longer hold power, not because they're wrong, but because they don't land the same. They speak to a self that was never truly there to begin with. Still, when that sense of identity is strong, the pull is magnetic. We cling to symbols and meaning because they make the world feel manageable. When that bond tightens, the wild and fantastical starts to feel more real than the obvious. The everyday becomes suspect. If something's too ordinary, too visible, we start to wonder what it's hiding. That's when things like conspiracies, psychic visions, or ancient hidden knowledge become survival tools. The ego grabs them and makes them shields. Because if I can manifest my reality, or decode society's puppet masters, or read the future in signs, then I don't have to face the one truth that shakes everything, the deep, unsettling sense that I'm a fragile, separate being, adrift in a world I can't control. That's the real stickiness of the rabbit hole. It's not just that the ideas are compelling. It's that they feel like safety. They feel like control. They offer the illusion of certainty when the ground underneath us feels like it's crumbling. And the mind, desperate for solid footing, drinks it all in without question. But here's the uncomfortable part. The real issue isn't the beliefs. It's the believer. The one who claims to have discovered the truth. Usually, what they've really done is build an even stronger mental fortress. It's just painted with different colors now. Mystical ones, revolutionary ones, and we've all been there. One day, you're questioning everything, the next, you're citing lunar cycles to explain why you're overwhelmed, or pointing to past lives to justify your isolation. The content changes, but the structure stays the same. There's still me, and there's still something out there pulling strings. That's how the ego survives, even in a robe and beads, even in the language of healing and awakening. The mind will build a temple out of anything. Philosophies, belief systems, even spiritual journeys can turn into comfort food for the imagined self. They don't free us. They lull us deeper into a prettier dream. And it's sneaky, because the trap feels like insight. It rewards us with meaning, with validation, with a story that makes us feel chosen. But underneath it all is still the same illusion that there's a separate I who needs that meaning to feel whole. And that's where things get slippery. Because now, it's not just about belief in hollow earths, secret elites, or psychic timelines. It's about believing that I'm the one uncovering it all, that I'm on some sacred mission, that I see what others can't. Even when that belief is dressed in spiritual clothes, it's still the same hook. The ego doesn't really care what you believe, only that you keep believing something, anything, because belief keeps the gears of thought spinning. And as long as thinking keeps spinning, the sense of me stays intact. But if belief starts to fade, if thought slows down just a little, something strange happens. That identity, the one holding everything together, starts to lose shape. And if that unravels, the whole structure begins to collapse. The dream starts breaking apart from within. That's why arguing with someone caught in illusion rarely changes anything. We're not just poking holes in their logic, we're shaking the foundation of who they think they are. That's not a conversation anymore. That's a threat. It's like trying to wake someone up from a dream by screaming at them. It doesn't wake them, it just makes the dream louder, scarier. Because when you confront an illusion directly, it tightens its grip. It's being fueled by fear, and fear never lets go easily. When cornered, it doesn't surrender, it digs in. That's why some debates don't just fail, they inflame. The more facts you throw, the deeper the other person sinks. Because it's not really about facts, it's about identity. About protecting a worldview that makes them feel stable, even if it's built on shaky ground. And here's the hard truth, we do it too. Just in subtler ways. We look at their story and think, they're lost. I'm clear. But that's just another illusion wearing cleaner clothes. The illusion of the one who knows better. The one who's awake. As long as we're playing the role of the awakened one, we're still inside the play. Still acting out a part. Truth doesn't have roles. It doesn't place some people above others. There's no hierarchy, no spiritual ladder, no levels of who's almost there or who's still asleep. There's only this what is, as it is. Everything else, that's more story. And that's why trying to pull someone out of illusion by force never works. Not because it's impossible, but because it's based on resistance, on tension, on trying to change them. But presence, real grounded presence. It doesn't argue. It doesn't push. It doesn't even need to speak. It just is. And somehow that changes everything. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do when someone is deep in illusion is to not resist them. That doesn't mean staying quiet or letting harmful ideas go unchecked. It means not feeding the illusion with your own. Because when someone tells you that celebrities are lizard clones controlled by interdimensional beings, your first instinct might be to roll your eyes or launch into a rebuttal. But what happens if instead you pause? What if instead of reacting to the surface of the claim, you sense into what's underneath it? What's driving that story? Fear, isolation, a world that betrayed them, a craving for control, a desperation for meaning. If you can feel that, really feel it, then there's no need to argue. You've already met them in the place that matters. And from that place, you don't become an opponent. You become a mirror, a quiet tuning fork, something that vibrates with clarity even when everything around is wrapped in confusion. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to pull them out. You just have to not join them in the dream. And when they're ready, and only when they're truly ready, they might start picking up that signal, that silent, unwavering frequency. There's no schedule for it, no prediction. Some illusions collapse quickly, like a spark catching fire. Others take years, decades. But one thing is certain, they don't feed off silence. They feed off reaction, off resistance. The more energy we give to fighting illusion, the more real it becomes. That's the power of clean attention. Not attention filled with quiet judgment or fake compassion. Not listening while planning your counter-argument. I'm talking about the kind of attention that's free from agenda, free from needing to fix anything. Just here, steady, open. Because presence isn't passive, it's transformative. Not like a tool or a strategy, but like sunlight dissolving mist. Nothing to force, nothing to control. Just the clear warmth of being. And we've all built our own temples of story, haven't we? Even in the most spiritual spaces. You hear it everywhere. Talk of timelines, energetic upgrades, ascension ladders. The subtle hierarchy of who's vibing higher than who. It sounds mystical, but it's still a structure, still a story, still a form of separation. None of it is inherently wrong, but none of it is necessary either. The mind loves the idea of progress, of stages, of getting closer. But what if there's nothing to approach, nothing to reach? What if all of that, every teaching, every map, every mystical step is just a prettier dream? Can we let go of even that, the spiritual identity that says I see more than others do? Because the moment we believe we're outside the rabbit hole, we've just entered a prettier one, with fancier wallpaper, maybe softer lighting, but it's still a room in the dream, and the mind will try anything to avoid its own ending, even turn enlightenment into a role. It'll quote, "There is no self," while quietly clinging to the self that knows that. It'll talk about surrender while still reaching for control. It'll nod solemnly at emptiness while still aching to be seen. So, when we see someone wrapped up in wild conspiracies, magic systems, or spiritual theater, it helps to pause. Not in judgment, but in honesty. Because while we may have stepped out of that particular tunnel, how many others are we still hiding, and how many invisible belief structures do we still carry like armor? This isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming clear, clean, transparent, willing to sit in not knowing without rushing to fill the space with another belief, another concept, another story. Because the moment we stop needing to be right, or enlightened, or helpful, something quiet moves in. And that quiet is what actually meets people, not as teachers, not as saviors, but as the thing they've never been separate from. It might not look like it, but even illusion carries grace. It's just wearing a disguise. We don't fall into strange beliefs because we're broken. We fall because the mind is always trying to make its way back home. That's what stories are. Messy, poetic, often painful attempts to find something solid, something whole. Whether it's a theory about ancient aliens or a prophecy about mass awakening, they all start with the same quiet ache. Please, let this mean something. And sometimes the dream has to hurt before we realize it is a dream. That's why there's no need to rush in and rescue people. No need to throw truth like a rope and drag them out. The story will break itself open. Always. Every belief structure eventually bumps into something it can't explain, something that doesn't move when it pushes. Something that doesn't answer back. That something is real. Not a fact, not a philosophy. Just presence. Unshakable. Still. Not dressed up in symbols or slogans. It doesn't need defending or justifying. It simply is. And when that hits, even for a split second, the whole mental scaffolding starts to shake. The illusion trembles under its own weight. And if we're nearby, when that moment comes really nearby, not as someone who knows better, but as someone alive in the same silence, then we become part of that shift. Not by force, not even by words, just by not interfering. That's why the deepest kind of compassion is invisible. It doesn't look like action. It doesn't look like a heroic intervention. It looks like nothing, like patience, like trust. It's not about changing minds. It's about not feeding the idea that their path is separate from ours. When we stop imagining there's a them to fix, we meet the only thing that's actually there, a swirl of beliefs passing through the same awareness that lives behind our own eyes. This isn't apathy. It's not detachment. It's love without an agenda. Love that doesn't need to do anything. Because there's no technique here, no blueprint, no clever 3-step plan to deprogram someone from illusion. The mind always wants that. It wants a method. But truth doesn't follow maps. And yet something remarkable happens when we stop reacting, when we drop the commentary, When we start living as that clarity we wish others could see, not for their sake, not to guide them, just because it's what we are. That's when change happens quietly, without trying. We can still show up, still care, still speak. But we don't have to control. The moment we let go of our own concepts, even the noble ones, the spiritual ones, we become something else. A kind of gravity. Not pulling people in, but drawing them toward their own center. Not because we're charismatic or wise, just because we're not tangled. You've felt it before, haven't you? That person who doesn't say much, who doesn't need to explain or prove or shine. But somehow, being near them makes you feel lighter, like you can breathe again. That's not charisma, that's clarity. That's the end of the dream, not through argument, but through contrast. And maybe that's all we're really here to be. Not the one who fixes the dreamer, not the enlightened messenger, just the one who stops dreaming. The one who walks with open hands, not clenched truths. The one who lives so gently that when someone nearby is ready to drop their story, they finally see how. No celebration, no spotlight, no fireworks of awakening, just a quiet return, a soft recognition that what we were chasing, we've never actually left. And that's the paradox. All that striving, all that searching for higher truths, deeper wisdom, secret knowledge, it was never leading us anywhere new. It was just circling around what was already here, what had always been here. We thought we were becoming something, but really, we were just looping through stories, trying to remember what we already are. The mind hates that. It wants effort to mean something. It wants the journey to justify itself. But the presence beneath the journey doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need to be earned. It doesn't require transformation. It's not waiting at the end of the tunnel. It is the tunnel, and the walker, and the walking. So when we see someone lost in a web of stories, spiritual or conspiratorial, religious or scientific, we can meet them with something deeper than correction. We can meet them with what doesn't move. Not our polished perspective, not our spiritual superiority, just that bare presence that never left them even in their most confused moment. And that includes us too. Because it's not like we're immune. The mind's favorite trick is to make even clarity into a badge. It'll quietly whisper, "You figured it out. You're beyond all this now." And if we believe that we're back in the dream, wearing a prettier costume this time, sure, but still dreaming, it's humbling, but also freeing, because it means we don't have to keep pretending. We don't have to perform being awake. We don't have to correct everyone or prove ourselves right. We can just be still, be kind, be here, not out of strategy, but because it's natural. And that changes things. Not overnight, not always visibly, but something shifts. When we're no longer trying to fix the dream, we're simply not feeding it anymore. When the stories show up, we let them pass. When someone speaks from illusion, we don't react. We feel the ache beneath the words, the longing beneath the theory, the fear beneath the certainty, and we stay steady. In time, maybe they feel it too. Maybe they see a crack in the wall. And maybe not always, but sometimes that's enough. Not for them to believe what we believe, but to start questioning what they thought was real. And in that small opening, the entire illusion begins to tremble. But we're not waiting for that. We're not holding our breath for transformation. We're just here, like sky around a storm, like stillness around noise, That's the real medicine. Not argument, not evidence, just being what doesn't leave when the narrative falls apart. Because deep down, there's nothing to teach, nothing to fix, no others to wake up. There's just this quiet seeing, this simple being, where all stories rise and fall. The same presence behind every belief, every dream, every moment of wondering who we are. And when even the wondering drops away, what's left? Only this: